Hey everybody, Cascaden here. I was recently asked by a friend why people oppose capitalism. After all, it's not immediately obvious for someone from a privileged background like him, and it's hard to see what all the fuss is about if you have a personal stake in it. Sure, the world's been in a bad spot and we're going full throttle towards collapse, but what does our economic system have to do with all of it? What is it that all these soy-sniffing socialists and joker-fied commie zoomers are so upset about even? This video seeks to explain that. There's just so much wrong with capitalism that it's hard to keep track of, so dumping as much on it as I can in one place would be a good way to start. If you want to learn what you should be up in arms about or turn your friends against it, this is a good way to get you going. After all, we could all use another black pill on how fucked everything is, don't we? So without further ado, hit the like and subscribe button and let's jump right in. At the most basic level, capitalism steals the joy of a job well done, the satisfaction working people get from knowing they've worked hard on something they care about. Instead of benefiting us and our communities, our passion and toil are repurposed to serve the ends of the ruling class. We have to craft our waking hours around work we'd rather not even do, leaving us alienated from it in the same way a parent taking a doll that their child made from them does. Instead of our labor product, we receive wages. While they're a lifeline to you, your boss sees them as a cost to be minimized. The bourgeoisie's profit margin is the difference between what your labor creates and what they pay you. So every day you trade hours of your life you can never get back for a fraction of the wealth that you created. The rest goes right up to your boss and their company, leaving billions for them and barely anything for you. Wage slavery isn't the only form of systemic theft under capitalism. Quite often, bosses don't even pay the pitiful wages their workers are owed. The FBI estimates that wage theft amounts to billions stolen from workers every year, much more than robbery and almost as much as all other theft combined. The same businesses that would press charges if you stole bread to eat will happily make you work longer without pay and steal your tips from under your nose. If I shortchanged a car, that would be theft. But if your boss shortchanges your labor, well, that's just business. They don't just steal the wealth we create and the wages we are owed, they steal our whole lives as well. We are forced to spend the majority of our waking hours working to make money for other people. Under capitalism, there's just no such thing as a work-life balance. From day one, we're forced to tailor our education, schedule, and goals to what's profitable for capitalists instead of what's fulfilling for us, spending what little free time we have consuming the products that they sell to us. And that's just the start of it. Apart from the prisoner military, it's hard to imagine a less free institution in America today than the modern workplace. The God-given rights we take for granted are all but absent on the job. Your boss can tell you what to say, what to do, when you can take breaks, how long you should be working for, and what you can't do off the job if you want to keep it. Their authority is absolute, and as someone with bills to pay, you have no choice but to follow it to a T if you don't want to lose your livelihood and end up with a gap on your resume. The power of big business is as much of a tyranny as that of big government. The state can't spy on you, but your Amazon Alexa sure as hell can. The government can't censor your speech, but all the platforms you speak on can silence it at a moment's notice. All of this power is held by a class of capital owners with none of the checks and balances in place in the state. This is antithetical to a free society. If we live in a democracy, why can't we elect our boss? Contrary to what you might hear, there's no such thing as a self-made billionaire. Instead of putting in the work themselves, capitalists pay other people to do all the work for them. The rate of CEO to worker pay is over 300 to 1, even as they spend most of their time attending meetings or fucking their intern. Capitalism leads to inhuman levels of inequality that has concentrated money and power in the hands of a small plutocratic elite who rule the world from their shining glass towers. They own all the media, have bought out all our politicians, and reshape the world in their image, with the whims of the wealthy trumping the will of the people. Their lavish wealth and commercial empires are built off the exploited labor of their employees, the essential workers keeping society up and running during the pandemic while they were safe in their super yachts. And they're all too willing to resort to money laundering and international fraud to preserve their power over all of us. Capitalists are criminals. Plain and simple. Worse yet, this gluttonous opulence exists right beside horrid levels of poverty and pain. Even in the richest countries on earth, millions suffer from malnutrition and mistreatment while millions more are stuck in preventable poverty. Instead of using their vast wealth to feed the poor and heal the sick, capitalists use it to traffic children or send them into space in phallic-shaped rockets while their countrymen wallow in misery back on Earth. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that the wealthy are sociopathic and corrupt, so it's no surprise how many of them were closely tied to Jeffrey Epstein. I think we can all agree that every human deserves something to eat, a place to sleep, quality education, and healthcare whenever they need it. As much as capitalism is hyped up as the best system in history, it's never been able to deliver this. Globally, millions die every year from hunger, poverty, and preventable illness, even as we have the means to address all of them. Education is out of reach for many, and thousands of Americans die every year from a lack of healthcare due to its costs and commodification. If it really is the best system, why hasn't the market been able to solve these things? Why are we still struggling with these age-old problems even in the wealthiest country on Earth? The answer is simple. Capitalism puts human greed over human need. We produce goods and services not for use, but for sale. If it isn't profitable to meet people's needs, they will go unmet, even when there's enough around for everyone. Don't have the money to buy some bread? That's your problem. So have fun starving in the streets while fresh food goes uneaten. Private charities sure as hell haven't picked up the slack, and social programs have been so horribly gutted after decades of pressure from wealthy business interests that they're practically non-existent. If something is required to live, everyone should have guaranteed access to it. But the free market prefers to put necessities behind a paywall as the masses go without. It kills them in the same way as a lifeguard refusing to rescue a drowning man does. Putting profit over people is a recipe for disaster. For hundreds of years and in every country, captains of capital have actively encouraged racism, classism, religious sectarianism, and other forms of oppression as tools to pit the masses against themselves. Malcolm X said that you can't have racism without capitalism, and it's easy to see why. Think about all the money that's made off of the racist prison-industrial complex, or the businessmen funding racism in the mainstream media, or how companies routinely continue to discriminate and get away with it. Even as they slap it on a Rego logo during June, big business still funds racist legislation and anti-gay politicians that'll hold up progress for years to come. Think the system is voluntary and non-violent? Think again. Capitalism got its start through acts of robbery, with peasants violently evicted from common land as it was fenced over by porkies during the enclosure movement. It spread across the world through terror, not trade, from the genocide of natives across the Americas to the plundering of the Indian subcontinent by the East India Company. We didn't choose this system. It was imposed on us, and we have no choice but to play by its rules if we want to survive. Anyone who dares challenge it has found themselves subverted, invaded, and overthrown by capital, with multinational corporations committing horrid atrocities to protect their bottom line. As an economic system, capitalism requires infinite growth. If you cut into it, you get a recession, as the recent coronavirus crisis has so painfully shown. For the system to survive, new products must be made, new markets must be opened, and the masses must mindlessly consume whatever useless junk is shoved in their faces. This runs at odds with the reality of a world with finite resources, one that'll have catastrophic consequences later down the line. This relentless drive for growth is what's killing the planet. None of the world's major industries would be profitable if the environmental costs of their production were factored in. It's largely been private, profit-seeking companies that have spearheaded the destruction of the Amazon, the vast piles of trash that litter the world, and the deaths of millions through pollution. Despite all the misery they cause, these bougie fuckers hardly give a shit about it. In fact, it'd be irrational to do so, as their sole purpose is to maximize profit regardless of the damage it might cause. Once you realize how a tree has no value under capitalism until it's torn down and turned into furniture, you begin to see the root cause of our climate crisis. Capitalism is also rabidly inefficient. The narrow focus on self-interest and wealth accumulation makes looking at the big picture all but impossible. Companies kill cows to keep milk prices high and trash thousands of usable products rather than sell them at a loss. They rarely look past the next quarter, leading to them maximizing returns by laying off employees to buy back stock instead. Ever wondered how cities like Detroit went from metropolitan powerhouses to rundown slums? Because companies shipped all the jobs there abroad against the wishes of their workers, dooming many to misery for the purpose of profit. Companies are legally required to maximize shareholder returns. If they use their revenue to, say, feed the hungry or house the homeless, they can end up getting sued, as they'd be in effect taking money from its rightful owners. Had GM invested in their employees instead of using their earnings to pad out their shareholders, they likely wouldn't have gone bankrupt back in 2008. But that wouldn't please their investors, now would it? The system is built on this profit motive. It's easy to see how it's the source for much of our woes. From planned obsolescence to rampant price gouging, it's clear that the invisible hand would rather fuck people over than deliver on its promises. Capitalists cut corners to drive down costs at every opportunity, leading to shitty products and disastrous consequences. When money is all that matters, all of their concerns are flushed down the drain. Exxon hid knowledge of climate change from the public to keep making bank, and Nestle killed babies by pushing their mothers to ditch breast milk for formula. The love of money really is the root of all evil. And what else is capitalism other than the blind worship of mammon? Not only that, but this one-of-a-kind economic system has a habit of shitting itself every decade or so while sending millions down into destitution and debt. It's so stable and efficient that all it took back in 2008 for the whole global economy to collapse was for a few fuckers at Wall Street gambling our lives away and Lehman Brothers to go bust and send the whole system crumbling down with it. Just 12 years later, we saw another crash caused by a little virus from China. The only reason we're not in another Great Depression right now was from the Fed printing money to prop up the stock market and sending working Americans to face the plague and die for the line. I'm only 20, and I've already lived through two once-in-a-lifetime economic crises that have left misery in their wake, and you're telling me this is really the best we can do? Think of all the problems we're still facing here in America, the wealthiest country on earth and bastion of the free world. Only under capitalism is it possible for us to produce enough to feed everyone, but throw 40% of it away when it can't sell instead of feeding the 1 in 5 of us who go hungry every night. Only under capitalism is it possible for us to have 17 times as many empty homes as homeless people, with families sleeping in tents across the street from vacant luxury condos. Only under capitalism is it possible for a nation's infrastructure to stagnate and decay due to negligence while millions of strong, hardworking laborers can't find a job, with people needing to work to live but not being guaranteed a chance to do so. Suicide, depression, and drug use are on the rise, spurred on by an opioid epidemic deliberately induced by Big Pharma. We're being crushed between low wages and high rents, with Wall Street scalping up housing like video game consoles and depriving us of the American dream. Young people can't afford to have kids, with the market leading to obscene childcare costs and gouging new parents out of thousands. Healthcare is an expensive, Byzantine mess with our privatized system leading to higher costs and worse service in the rest of the world. Retirement is becoming a pipe dream, as capitalists salivate as the chance to profit off our labor even into our golden years. Private companies are killing the planet for profit, and we're practically powerless to do anything about it. Capitalism is leading us towards a dystopian future worse than anything we imagined. This system is indefensible, and it's easy to see why. All around us, we are witnessing a moral, societal decay unlike anything seen since the fall of Rome, with a clique of capitalists lording over our lives with the oligarchs of days yonder. This is making people angry. Very angry, with folks left, right, and center starting to consider radical alternatives. In times like these, it's no wonder that anti-capitalism is on the rise. Our future is being killed as the modern-day robber barons and the system that supports them make mountains of money off of it. As bad as things are, they're going to get so much worse, and it's about time we pondered what to do about it. We're at a crossroads, an epoch of history with two paths going forward. Do we want to preserve capitalism, doing business as usual towards a future of corporate rule and dystopian decay? Or do we want to destroy capitalism, harnessing the power of the people to take control of our destiny and lead humanity towards greatness by building a system run by and for the many instead of the few? That, my friends, is for you to decide.